There ain't that many people. No. I only got a couple of miles. Stays looks about like how Stephen may go. He's like, you're like, yeah. Look. Do you know what I went through for tomorrow? Like, seriously. It better be good and fresh.
Yeah, oh, I make a motion to approve that.
Motion by Linda.
Second. That's about Aaron.
Second by Kelly, all in favor? Approved. If you would stand for the pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us to gather here tonight. I pray that you watch over us as we make decisions to better this school district, for the students, the faculty and teachers, everybody involved. Dear Lord, I pray that I thank you for giving us the opportunity to acknowledge the retirees tonight. I want to thank them for their service to this district. Dear Lord, I pray that you watch over everyone as they leave here tonight and travel back home, that they make it home safely. In Jesus' name.
Amen.
Recognition.
Retired teacher, Mike.
A group of people with us who have earned a rest, and I'm sure that they're glad to be, I know they've enjoyed their time here, but they're glad to be moving on to wherever they're going to be doing. I'm going to call the names of the individuals who will be retiring this year, and when I call your name, if you would come up, please, and I want to announce the years of service. That'll be the years of service with us. Many of them had been with other districts prior to us having the opportunity to have their service. But we'll start with Mr. Brad Bates. Brad has 21 years of service. And Brad, we'll give this to him later. Mr. Patrick Bowen, he has 14 years of service. Cindy Chastain, 30 years of service.
Do they know that we applies?
Tracy Dean. Yes, ma'am. Please remain.
Oh, sure.
How many years?
32.
Oh. 32 at Chatsworth.
I know rare. You don't find many people at the same school.
Linda Dotson. 33 years, Murray County High School.
Well, no, some of that was subbing and other things, because I'm technically 25, thank
Well,
you.
that's
Ms. Gay Garrett. Ms. Garrett has 29 years of service. Cecilia Hedrick. Coker, 27 years. Angie Jones, 27 years. Gina Linder, 25 years. know she's here. Almost 28 years of service with us. Kathy Moore. 23 years of service with us. Terry Osborne. Terry, 19 years. Sam Satterfield, 14 years. Tanya Stafford, 29 years. Marcia Smith, 29 years. Donna Stanley, 16 years. Lori Townsend, 21 years. Kenny Walraven, 8 years with us. Cumulatively, he was here for 7 before and then came back for 1. Rhonda Yoder, 8 years. Folks must have started retirement early. And that is the list of our retirees this year. Thank you for your service.
Okay, next, Adrian Wallace is here to talk about the tradition of our legal professionals. Recognize them.
Okay, so I wanted to recognize our amazing librarians. They do a phenomenal job promoting a love of reading, helping with tech integration, and wearing many, many different hats. The reason I wanted to recognize them tonight was they helped the district become Common Sense Media certified. And what that means is they excelled at integrating digital citizenship lessons into our libraries and helped the whole district get certified. So that's why I wanted to call them in tonight. If you're here, please come up here. Allison Harrison from Spring Place. Christy Ballou from Bagley. Derek Hall from Chatsworth. Jane Paxton from Northwest. Jill Hensley from Coker. Jennifer Jones from Woodlawn. Robert Brooker from Blyden. Ryan Lone from Murray County High. Sarah Hicks from North Murray High. And last but not least, Shelley Falls from Eton. I'm going to do the shuffle.
Yeah.
One step that way. Steve, you're in.
You need to take a stand.
Well, I can, but my camera's still live. Even if there you go. Got it. Thank you.
We'll take a 3-minute break.
Okay.
Go ahead. Jill, Jill, you just told me to take those buttons out.
Reprint all of that paper, but I had him down as a no, and it was actually, he just recused himself, from that vote, so I corrected that.
Anything else? All right, next superintendent report.
Okay, operational effectiveness, the first item we have is Mike come up here and talk about, glad on the furniture bid, we approved that at the last meeting, but in our rush to get it, since we got it the day before, there was an error. So we found it after the fact, so Mike is here to talk to you about that.
It was actual computating error on my part. I have to admit, Daphne outsmarted me. So when she created her worksheet, she had already put a formula in. So as we were at the last minute taking out extra things to get it to the price that we were at, it was also subtracting those things for the total. I didn't know it because I was working up in the document. So when I got done, I looked down at the total, subtracted my $109,000 from it, and then gave that number to y'all. And now we eliminated all of the desk and the chair. So what we had to do is call Verco, make sure that we could get that 109,000 back in. They said we could. I talked with Kathy, humbly I came to Steve first. Steve, this happened. So he said, well, we'll just have to take mud in our face. You can't explain what happened. So that's the honest truth. What happened is I was calculating in a document. It was calculating at the bottom, and I didn't know that, so I made that mistake. I wished I would have had Steve call me harder when he says that number don't match my number, because he actually had the total. So I didn't see that total when I was working it. So ultimately, what you guys had approved before was, I think it was $328,082.45 for Glide Middle School. When we added that 109,000 back to it, it gave us the total of $437,563.25. So that was the 109,000 that we added back for the half of the sets of desks and student chairs that we had eliminated all of. We were trying to eliminate half of them. Right. And when I subtracted the number from the total, it eliminated them all. So Lady from Berkeley has worked well with us to say, hey, we can get those back in. I will say this, we worked with I worked with Daphne today. There were a few things that she actually still had to eliminate from hers, not to change the total, but because when we bid this to Verco, we bid it as a total package of everything she had on there. When we took things off and then contacted Verco back, this is what we need to take off because we had to meet a certain number in the package deal. Their prices changed because we eliminated some things out that they bid as a package. So when we eliminated some of them, some of the prices went higher. So she had to work with a lady from Verco, and she took off a few other things off to make sure it matched our total, which was that number I just gave y'all, the $437,563.25. We told the Verco lady that was our top limit that we couldn't go over. So when she did her repricing, her and Daphne got together and decided what other few items she had to eliminate to make sure that price worked.
Any questions? Thanks, Mike. I guess we do have the next item is the CTA budget for FY23. That is wasn't incorporated into the regular budget that we had at the budget meeting that Kathy went over. This is the part where we have to, Danny has to submit the CTAE operational budget to the state of Georgia DOE CTA department by May the 15th. Every year it's $269,000. It's the same CTA total budget that's been for, I don't know, several years. It's nothing else. It's just required we have to do that in order that we can get our amount. And actually, assuming, we don't even have the final allotment sheet, part of it comes through QBE funding, and we just have to match if you see local funding, the 132,797 is the part that is actual local money. So even though you're approving $269,000 budget, technically only 132,797 is the local money, but it's required participation so that we can get funding from our those state grants. So it's the same as it's been for, I know, 20 years or so. Then you can see the breakdown, down below that, how it's spent, which, like I said, it's incorporated into the budget as a whole, but we would have to have approval on this on Monday so that then we can submit it to the state DOE. Do I have any questions? All right, next, HVAC Coker.
I brought the class and show and tell.
Oh.
So if y'all remember, it's been several months ago, we started doing controls work at Coker, Chatsworth, Gladden. So when they got down to Coker, they were having a lot of issues trying to make it work, and they just couldn't. So what their responsibility is basically to put an actuator on this, make it open close, just that simple. But they couldn't. So they got in there and they actually cut some of them out, and they said, this is so bad, we're gonna bring it to you, you need to see what's going on. This is what we have all through the ceiling, in that building. And it tells me a lot of things. Number one, it never worked, never could work. And there had to be some paper fudging by some people when the school was built. There's just no two ways about it because it wouldn't pass test and balance. The long and the short of it is we got 161 of these things that have got to go. We can't put brand new controls in there if they're not going to control anything. That's what it boils down to. So I wanted to bring this and kind of show y'all what it was and what we were up against and the reason why we were needing to change out these dampers in that school. This is basically every classroom in there. So the long and the short of it is, if the classroom needs air, it will drive this thing open. When it doesn't need air, it shuts.
You can't shut that?
Yeah, they don't even come close. So I talked to some folks that had been around there, and they were saying that's been a problem for a long, long time. Well, here's why. This is your problem. So correcting this is not, it's not really an option, to be honest with you. We can't leave this like this. It's not going to work, especially with all the controls that are going in there. So I think it was a $44,000 PO to change out 161 of those things throughout. That's what this is, and that's what it's for.
It's don't let sun rain. It's the very, it's you got a PO in there, but this explains what the PO is.
I don't know. I'm gonna find that out, but I don't even know who the contract was on that. I know the architect was. It was Southern A&E did that job, but this is not an architect's fault. This is mechanical contractors issue. And CM, whoever the CM was back then, you know, that would fall on them. But this is just terrible work.
Coker was built somewhere around 93,
93, 94, I think.
So are we sure that we don't have any other schools that have that?
I know for a fact, this is the only building that we have in the system that's set up with what's called a DVT system, but this is the only system the only school that we have with this particular system. So.
But Chris,
You paid extra for it, right?
Yes, you did. You did.
when I was there, my room was at the very end. And it would, after a certain time, it would make this noise. So there were people who came and went up in there and looked. Why didn't they find that bell?
Maybe they weren't smart
All
enough.
good, he better put it in and start with it.
No, I told our people. I mean, it was a maintenance report thing.
BVT is a different animal than just regular HVAC. I can talk longer than you want to listen to it, but a BVT system, you have to understand how it works, or you're going to be lost. But this is kind of a special system. You do pay more to get it, but the way that this one was put in, it's never going to work. Period. It never did work.
Well, Mother would be cold, and I'd be burnt. No, they would be hot, and we would be cold.
Yes.
And we had to buy a heater to go in our room because we were freezing, and everybody else was hot.
After 25 years, we know why.
They know why, yeah.
This is the deal. So it's a lot of money, I know, but what are you going to do?
You gotta fix it.
What are you going to do? Any questions?
Did they just not drill a hole with the right place? I mean, not
Well,
halfway.
this should be a factory damper. This is a homemade rig up, gone, for lack of a better term. It's just a mess. But it will be a factory damper that actually closes 100% and opens 100%. That's what it needs to do.
Well, you know, man, I use code all the time.
There you go. That's not a pro.
The next, item we have is a 5-year facility plan resolution. We're required, as, you know, we've discussed numerous times, to have a facility plan always on file with the DOE. This just says that we will complete a new 5-year facility plan by March the 15th of 2003, so that we can have our capital outlay money. And it's good timing, you know, because we will begin the SPOS next year, and so we can be sure we've got everything, moved around, and it will reflect some of the controls and things that we've already done with some of the CARES money or general fund money that we have done. So, it's time to do a facility plan. And the funny thing about, it says a 5-year facility plan, but it's really only good for 4 years. Now, don't test me why, but that's just the way it works. So, we will vote on, this is just saying we will engage in a 5-year facility plan that we're required to do, and we'll have it completed, by March the 15th of next year. Any questions about that? Okay, next, it's a little bit out of order but it's in one of those POs. We have our science and social studies curriculum there. We will have teaching learning here to talk about science and social studies curriculum. We talked about that in the budget meeting, how we're gonna pay for it, and what we're gonna do. So, before we get down to the PO, we'll just ask them to kind of cut this a little out of order so we can go over that.
We wanted to have an opportunity to share with you the conclusion of that entire process. We actually kicked off in February and began working on bringing science and social studies curriculum to our teachers. You guys know that we now have a full curriculum in our ELA classes and with our math and with our Tier 3 intervention classes. So we're rounding out science and social studies. Like I said, we kicked off in February. We brought vendors in. We had teachers across the district participate in those vendor presentations. We videotaped all of those and sent those out so any teacher that teaches science or social studies had an opportunity to view. Vendors sent their samples into all of our buildings. Teachers were able to teach from them. We asked for surveys to rank the products that they liked the best, what the things that they really wanted in those classrooms and out of those resources. We went back to 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade to get some clarity on 2 of the vendors, and so that whole process has wrapped up, and we're excited to bring those proposals to you guys tonight. In kindergarten through 2nd grade, because of the nature of the time during the school day and the extended ELA and math blocks, the K2 teachers really felt strongly that resources would be really helpful for them rather than a full-on curriculum. So things like social studies and science weekly, additional nonfiction readers, and things of that nature to really supplement what they were doing. It was overwhelming, and there's some principals here that will nod their head that they felt like that was the best addition for those classrooms. And then in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, overwhelmingly for science and social studies, the vendor will be McGraw-Hill, which is impact social studies and their impact science. So where Spencer and I have tried really hard to build out a consistent K-8 program for science and social studies, it just wasn't going to lend itself that way because of some of the differences in the standards. So 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade in both content areas will have the same vendor. And then it will switch over for 6th, 7th, and 8th.
And that's, I would just like to give a shout out to all the teachers, administrators, and coaches that participated in this because they really did invest a lot of time in this. they didn't take any shortcuts through the process. And so in 6 through 8, our social studies will be Claremont Crest. We currently use that in 8th grade. It's Georgia Studies. And the 6th and 7th grade is World Studies for Georgia students. That was a unanimous selection. In 6 through 8, science was HMH, Georgia Science. And I think that was 13 or 14 votes. It was clearly the choice there. And we also, that did round out the K through 8 all content. And in the high school, we started with our EOC subject plus geometry. So in Algebra 1, geometry, biology, and U.S. history, they chose SATIS, and that was unanimous. And then in American literature, they chose HMH. So they spent a lot of time in that. And one of the things, Kelly and I shared a Screencastify 2 days ago with the coaches and administrators, and we're going to send that to Dorisha and let her share it with you. And it's got more details as far as the number of evaluation forms, the steps in the process, and all those. But needless to say, there was a lot that went into this, and the formal process started in February, but actually the process started probably a year before that. We started looking at vendors, and one of the things during our exit presentation with Cognitive, they mentioned the fact about the process of implementing the curriculum, and that was noted by several of the review team members that it was a good process, and that the teachers seemed to appreciate that, and that was noted in several of them. And they encouraged us to continue, that process. And so the next step, too, we'll have of course, coming to the board Monday night, the first boards are approved, and we'll start scheduling all the training days and everything.
Oh, I will add, I think for all of them, it's a 6-year adoption.
Yes.
For science and social studies. So the total figure that you are seeing runs it out for 6 years. So the way we have staggered our adoptions, we won't run into content after content after content. That there will always be a couple of years in between. ELA will sunset, and then a couple of years before math, and then a couple of years before science and social studies. So we have a consistent curriculum in all of our classrooms, which is something we never had. It's an extremely exciting time for our teachers.
I did have a question because I had someone call me about the social studies curriculum, and they were saying it doesn't meet the Georgia standards. So can you explain to me, like, what's the difference in national standards and Georgia standards?
Yes, and Kelly, the truth is, even our math is written on the national standards. But what vendors have gotten really good at and will always provide is an alignment. So what they'll do is they'll take their Georgia standards, or our Georgia standards. This is the way our math is done. This is the way our ELA is done. And they will take the national standards and where it's laid out and how that content is covered in our curriculum and design a crosswalk. So all the teachers will have their Georgia standards and know exactly in that curriculum where it is addressed. So it's the problem that you run into is that not many vendors write for state specific. There is not a lot of return on investment when you write solely for a single state. So they will take the national standards and then they will align them in their work specifically for the states they work inside of. So all of the teachers will have that alignment document, and we'll work very closely with our vendors to make sure that teachers understand how they align to their standard and what the expectation is for that grade level. So like I said, it's the way our ELA is done, it's the way our math is done, and certainly provide you guys with all those documents as well. If there's any questions. Social studies certainly was the one that was the most problematic.
So do you think that, I'm just asking, instead of having a curriculum for the upper grades in social studies, just doing the resources like they're doing for the lower kids, the lower grades, or is that going to be not a good option for like 3rd through 5th or 4th through 6th or whatever we were doing?
I think there's a couple of considerations, and one of them certainly is the direction of the school board wanting to round out that core curriculum at all of those grade levels. And then it is working with teachers to understand, because if you think about it, science and social studies teachers are the ones sort of on this adoption loop. So 4 years ago we started ELA, and they are learning, they're just new to the process. And so
So will we still have people, cause I know with ELA, they have people that come into the schools and help teachers.
Mhm.
So will this
Yes,
just be the same?
yes, we have, multi-year professional learning contracts with them. So they will come in and work very closely. We'll kick our summer training off this summer.
There's also a lot of virtual trainings that are offered in the library that we have in several of the subjects too. So, but Kelly and I made sure when we talked to vendors that we had on-site professional learning to get us started. But there's also that in addition to.
Yeah, and we'll always have that training cycle, Kelly, for new hires. Yeah. You know, even as we roll into the fourth year of our ELA curriculum, we know we'll have year one teachers. So we're sort of always planning for that year one piece and how to bring those up to speed. But I think we'll be just fine with our social studies. That there are alignment documents there will help walk them through so that they feel confident that they're addressing the standards.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Is it stuff that this curriculum doesn't cover that's in our standards, or is it doesn't go in the same order?
It's in there, Aaron. It may just not be in the same order.
Okay.
In the 6 through 8, social studies is aligned. We're fortunate Claremont Press is a vendor, so it's 100% aligned to the Georgia standards. But Georgia's not a textbook adoption state, so the big vendors, they cater to those, states that commit to buying curriculum.
Yeah, they're all 100% aligned. It's just that like Claremont Press is written specifically for Georgia. It's a small little niche publishing house that really bubbled up out of some work out of Gwinnett County, if I'm not mistaken.
8th grade. Georgia studies.
Yeah, and so they have built this little cottage industry. And they're not one of the big, huge national vendors, but they write just for Georgia, which is really not a common. When you deal with national vendors, you're not, and that's the same way with math and ELA. Everything is covered. It is, and we'll work with our vendors very closely to make sure that they feel confident.
And then the problem you get, when Georgia went away from textbook adoptions, then there is nobody that publishes any curriculum that strictly aligns with the Georgia standards other than the Georgia studies. So everybody you have to have, it's in there, you have to have the bridges and the ways to access over to it.
And Brenda will probably remember when the big push went from, I guess, the QCCs to the big push in Georgia is whether we were going national standards or not. And, when we started with Common Core, I guess you guys will remember that big entrance into Common Core, and that was considered a national standard. The national standards is an uproar that came out of the state of Georgia. That we don't want to teach national standards, we want Georgia-specific standards. And that began a whole multi-year process of rewriting and revising. And Renda, you'll know because you're kind of in the middle of it. But then that puts you out of the pocket with a lot of publishers. But what they've done is they've made sure that their product aligns to the states they serve and provide the documentation to support that.
So just out of curiosity, how often does Georgia change their standards?
Every 5 years they review them.
And ELA the year after that.
So is that going to affect our curriculum?
No.
One of the things in high school in Algebra 1 and Geometry we looked at is there's no hardback adoptions in those because the math standards are about to change. So in there's some significant shifts like in math where some of the math standards are going to change. So, and they can, it's print and digital, but the print is consumables, meaning we're going to teach the standards this year, and then next year the consumables will be aligned to the new standards. So we're not investing in anything, that's going to be obsolete the year after that. So, and also in our 6 through 8 science, we get a little bit lucky with HMH. They have a Georgia science curriculum that's aligned. So,
Kelly, we also knew that going into our math adoption, but we were lucky enough to see, and at the point in time where we were, the state was pushing out the draft of all the math standards, and we knew what they were going to look like, and we knew the way they were going to be configured. And so we knew ahead of time that Ready Math was going to be right in the pocket of where we needed them to be. But they're also now working on their support documents for us with the new standards in mind. So they'll roll out this year, but then they'll be tested the year after that. Right. So we've got 2 years to really get those new standards, and they're not dramatic changes. Some stuff may shift grade levels, but the intent of what we are currently teaching is in the new standards. It's not a dramatic shift. So we feel like we're in a really good spot over the course of the next 5 years for math, 6 years for this. We have 2 more years with ELA.
It's good to know since math changes how it works every 5 years.
Yeah, I need somebody to teach me how to do the box
Yeah.
method, so I might need to come sit in the classroom myself.
Yeah, partial
I don't
products
know
and
how
all
to do
that.
The good thing about having digital resources now and that being a huge part of the catalog from the vendors is those can be changed and you don't have,
Very quickly.
you know, a bunch of workbooks and textbooks sitting on the shelf in the book room
Shelves.
like
Yeah.
the dust.
Yeah.
So,
What was the name of the company you said that was Georgia?
Claremont Press.
Claremont Press.
They're actually, they've expanded some too, and they're doing other state-specific middle school. So they found their little niche, and you know, they did North Carolina, I think South Carolina, some other ones. So.
And they were in the 8th grade classrooms this year in
Yes.
that Claremont Press. So again, it adds to that continuity of that grade band, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and then on up through, which is really awesome.
And we'll share the screencast file with Risha, so when you look at that, it'll explain more details about the process with some numbers and everything.
I just think it's a pretty neat idea that they did that. You know, they saw a need and like, hey, we can do that.
Yeah, they're the ones making all the.
They do it with low overhead too, Brenda. Like when I call Claremont Press, I talk to Tommy. He's the owner. You know, when I call him,
That's cool.
he, you know, there's no voice, you know, automated voice message.
Yeah.
I talk to Tommy. And Tommy, can I talk to Stephanie? Yeah, hold on just a minute.
What did you say they started out as Georgia history?
Yeah, like the 8th grade Georgia Studies. I think that was their first product. Then they expanded to 6th and 7th grade because 6th and 7th grade social studies is vastly different. The Georgia versus national standards.
So this is McGraw we're getting the social studies and science from.
For 3rd grade. Yeah, and Kelly, I will just remind you guys again, that the vote was overwhelming for both of those. And I went back to the teacher specifically in those 2 grade levels, and I did get a personal email from one teacher that had some questions about that as well. And I got back with her and talked to her and told her what our plan was for using that. So other than the one that I got, everybody else participated. We had great participation in the surveys and the feedback and the rankings. So.
Okay, when they're taking the milestones test, is social studies and science on the test for like the other kids, that's 6, 7, and 8?
5th grade is science, and 8th grade is science and social studies.
Okay, so.
And social studies isn't tested until 8th grade.
Okay, so, but that's national test, right? Or is it?
No,
That's
it's
milestone.
Then that's what we need, instead of, right?
So that's Georgia's, this milestones is all Georgia.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, but
There is no
I thought
milestones.
you got the 8th grade. Who's 8th grade social studies?
Claremont Press.
That's
Georgia specific.
And 8th grade science is a Georgia science.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I mean, Georgia science, I'm sure is different from US science. Math is probably different.
Georgia history.
Yeah.
I still don't understand how math changes.
I mean, yeah.
Transformations was a big part of what we moved. I'll learn more about
What
that.
was that in 5th grade is science?
McGraw Hill, Aaron. It's McGraw Hill.
And that's
It's Inspire Science.
Yes.
And does it match up so that, okay.
Yeah, it does. It's an excellent program, actually. Excellent program. Anything else? You guys have questions for us? It's a big day in Murray County to have curriculum.
Once you have this in hand, everybody has a design, bought and paid for program to walk through for the year.
K-8 and most
K-8.
of the high school. There are still some high school subjects will standalone that we'll work on. One of them, economics, which they're using some resources from Georgia Council on Economic Education, but there'll be a couple of non-EOC classes in high school that we'll work on that next.
Physics,
Aaron, we were talking
Keys.
today,
Ninth
Dr.
grade.
Brock and, Greg Welton, I didn't realize that, there are only 9 graduates from Dalton School of Education this year. 9. And we were talking about the fact that as we deal more and more with the teacher shortage and new teachers coming into the profession, how fortunate it is that they have something to teach from. And they have that foundation to where we have equity across our district, that regardless of background, or, we have second career educators or people coming in who are doing a tab, that consistent instruction, that consistent curriculum is gonna help level the playing field for all of our children.
You don't mean 9 total, not
9.
college? Not
9.
9 Murray County,
No,
but 9
9.
total.
For the school education. Yeah. So, it's a great time to come to Murray County Schools. Yeah,
Hey,
it's
you
great
just
time.
keep us past that where we
Yeah.
talk to you can come back.
Oh, did they pass that?
Or he signed the bill, yeah.
So you guys have any other questions for Spencer on curriculum and adoption?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you guys.
Next we'll move over into fiscal accountability, this Beth will come. First thing is, some very exciting news for the month of April. We got Shadow Smack.
So Steve and I celebrated this earlier when we saw it with the sales tax collections for April at $634,237.10. So as far as he knew and I knew, and it's the highest it's ever been.
There's been probably $600,000.
So that was very exciting. So you can see that we're close to our maximum amount on this 2017 SPOS, but hopefully we'll be able to count all that extra surplus money in that quarter, this next quarter. All right, moving on, I'm gonna go on to the financials because we got a lot to cover tonight. So you can see where we stand on our assets and liabilities. Cash flow is still doing very well, and if you compare us to March of last year, we're doing a little bit better on our cash flow, for sure. On revenues, that breaks down the detail on the next page on the revenues. We received about 80% of our revenues compared to about 81% this time last year. But you can see on the year-to-date, our total revenues are around 47 million compared to around 45 million last year. On expenditures, the next page as well, we're about 74% of the budget on expenditures compared to 70% last year. So we're slightly higher at 45 million in expenditures compared to 44 million last year. But that would be expected about this time of the year. It's still in a great range because we're 7 months of the school year, so we would be in the 70%. Okay. Last page gives us a summary that we are revenues are 2.2 million more than expenditures, which is a great place to be compared to about 1.2 million last year. And our ending general fund is estimated right now at 15.7 million compared to the 11 million that we thought we'd be at. So, any questions on those financials? Lastly, you'll see where we finally collected a little bit of interest. Finally got into the 1,000s.
Is there a threshold that jack the interest rate up, or is it just because it's following
No, I'm not real sure about the
Interest rates down.
It follows something. Yeah.
Yeah.
The way which rate was it?
Yeah.
It goes. I mean, of course, I had nearly 11 million in there.
I know it's a shame it takes that much to generate $1,800.
Right.
Go back, it's just, back, and the Fed raised interest rates 1/4 point about a couple of months ago, and then actually yesterday, they raised them a half, so. That's got been up 5 points. So anyway.
I'm guessing if we can get one of those 1980 17% CDs, I don't guess we can buy one.
I do, we invested in Maryville as well into the local government investment pool, and I remember distinctly collecting over $100,000 in interest in a school on investments. So we still got a long way to go.
Sorry.
We are at, but collectively, we collected like $5,000, almost 6,000. So that's better than nothing. Lastly, on the CARES 3, you should have the CARES 3. Okay, so you've got in there our current year-to-date spend, our open purchase orders, our balance remaining, and our total CARES funds remaining down there at the bottom at 2.2 million. That I've already deducted off the 6.5 million that I'm holding for 23-24. So in just a minute, we're going to talk about the curriculum and the technology and some of the things that are coming out of CARES 3. So
out of the 6.5 that you.
No, they're coming out of the 2.2 down at the bottom. So we're getting ready to spend 1.1 of that. Okay. So
it's about over.
The fun's about over.
For now.
As my husband said, he knew I could spend $20 million. So we'll go on to the purchase orders. And since Chris and Kelly and they've already talked to you about the curriculum, and you've got all your backup documentation that you can review, I'm just going to hit the highlights, okay? We'll move through these pretty quickly. The first one you have there is for technology, CDWG for $44,998.72. That is to buy the equipment for esports for North Murray and Murray County High School. Okay? That's technology equipment for esports coming out of CARES 3. The second one is for technology. It's for Gaggle.net for $35,649. That is for the technology filter for Google for our students. Okay, so that is also coming out of CARES 3. That's going to cover all the devices and help technology on the filter for Google. Okay.
Are these yearly costs? Like, are we going to do this every year?
Not on
sure about Gaggle.
Not on the esports, but Gaggle.
The Gaggle, yes.
Okay. And it may not be that much.
But, okay.
Yeah, but I'm not. Is that a license?
I think, yeah, it'll come down a little bit because that's training and everything for the first year too.
There's
so it'll come down.
development, one-time setup fee, and all that stuff will come out, right?
Okay. Good question. The next one is CWNG for $49,560. That's coming out of the Chromebook insurance fund that we currently have. You know how the students pay their fees for Chromebooks and repairs, and that goes into their funds. So this is taking money out of that fund so that they can buy cases for Chromebooks. And if make sure I'm saying it right, Israel,
yes.
What they intend on doing is as the fees are paid next year, then they're going to provide them a case to help eliminate some of the extra repairs.
Yes, correct.
Okay, so everybody that pays the fee will get the case.
Well, they'll take, how many kids take their Chromebooks home?
Sixth grade through 12th take it every day.
6 through 12 every day.
And and upper grades are the ones we get so many repairs on, especially the high schools. We have a ton in the high schools, so that's what we're really hoping to target.
I mean, percentage-wise, what's the annual loss?
Percentage-wise, you have any idea?
No.
I don't know percentage-wise, but it's.
I don't want to know.
No, like, we got 7,000 Chromebooks. And how many are gone in 1 year? Or
Total
Like
loss of
total
them?
loss? No, I wouldn't say a whole lot of total loss. Our biggest thing we're having is like screens. People drop them, then we have to repair screens. It takes a lot of time. And the
Stick their
screens are
pencil
hard
on
to
the
get.
camera,
Yeah,
pop off a
popping off keys off
keys.
keyboard, that kind of thing. Actually, getting rid of devices that are completely destroyed is probably just a handful a year.
It's just all the replacements and repairs
Well, I will
is
tell you,
what.
North Murray is good about wanting you to get them back to you, because we had a kid that moved, and that lady, I don't know who she was, but she sent me an email every day till that Chromebook, 5 days out. And I said, how long should we have their Chrome? I bet she kept sending that email. I said, you better go get her.
And
She
chargers. We
wanted
lose a lot of
that.
chargers too, so it's
What'd you say?
we lose a lot of chargers.
Yeah, we did lose this little one.
Yeah.
I did offer, we pay, we told her we pay for it.
But our insurance fund, that's where everybody has to pay $15, for insurance, but it more than covers our repairs, so.
We're not going in the hole with repairs.
No.
And this is for,
How long do you anticipate a Chromebook lasting?
3 to 4 years.
About 3 years. Yeah.
So we've got 2,000 Chromebooks in next year's budget? I didn't ask that question before.
We already,
Didn't we buy?
We already purchased them. Right. They've not gone out to students yet. We have them in now just from the grant we just got. They'll be going out to students this summer. So everybody, even the ones we replaced, will all be the old ones. So everybody will be on this new model after this summer.
On the school nutrition PO, did that get to them?
Yes, they have the
PO, okay.
yeah.
So
I think it
the
was
60.
64,000
Yeah,
for the tables. And that's coming out of their school nutrition funds. Yeah. Next, you have the maintenance department. You have a PO. Remember when we talked about in the budget, I told you we had 3 vans and we were buying 3 vans, and we just, whatever we could get, we were probably going to pay for next year. Well, this, in lieu of a van, we're ordered a truck, and that's what this is for. So hopefully we get a truck this year. We'll get a truck and we'll buy it whenever it comes in.
we still haven't got the other ones, have we, that we approved?
No, we're 6 or 7 months into this stint, with no idea when they're gonna get here.
Well, I'm impressed you found a truck for that kind of money.
I found that truck, and I'll make this brief, but anyway, it's the same folks that Mike and they bought the transportation truck from. And the guy told me, he said, I've got this one coming in, it will be here, on June the 3rd. But he said, I've gotta have something now, or he said, it's out the door. He said, take it or leave it. I wasn't really after a tool body truck. That's great. It's gonna work out even better. But he said, this is what's ordered. If you want it, here it is. If you're wanting something else, you'll be waiting for, I can't tell you how long. And I believe it. So we basically took what he had already coming, and it will be delivered to him on June the 3rd.
we hope.
We hope, right?
Well, basically, we're just gonna buy the vehicles as they come in, so whether it's this year or next year. Okay. Now we're gonna start on the curriculum. So the first one you have is for Claremont Crest for $97,292.25. That's for the World Studies curriculum for the middle grades. 6 and 7. That's Care Sturry. The next one is the McGraw-Hill. That's the science for the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grades for several schools, and that's the $308,091. It's for 3rd, 4th, and 5th.
It's science and social studies here.
Oh, it's to get, okay, this pays to get it.
Science and social studies for all elementary for 6 years.
6 years.
Yes.
That's also Care Sturdy. The next one is the, how do you say it?
H&H.
There you go.
H&H.
H&H.
Something.
Hardcore.
Yeah, hardcore hooking something.
Yeah, the $76,953.12 is the American literature, correct? For the, basically encompasses 6th through 12th grade, am I
The
understanding?
American, the H&H, that is for 11th grade.
11th grade.
Both high schools.
That's also CARES 3. The next one is the high school algebra, geometry, biology, and US history, SAVAS, for $261,194.30. That's also CARES 3.
Biology, geometry, and history.
Algebra 1, geometry, biology, and US history. And the last one there, for teaching and learning is HMH, and this is the science curriculum for $193,991.94. That's also CARES 3.
And this is what grade?
6.
Okay. Okay, the last one that we added is the control systems. That's the to help solve the damper issue at Coker for the $44,813, and that's local funds. Local funds, yes.
Chris mentioned that if you call it the Lakeland Authority, is that, are we going to try to go back and find those people? It's too late.
Yeah, I know it's too late, but I still
We found years we're gonna come hunt you down.
because I'm gonna find out who it was. There's nothing that you can do. I mean, we're 25 years out, but it would be interesting to know who it was,
But
if
it
they're
was
even still
wrong
in
from the
business.
beginning.
Yes,
They
it
agreed to
was.
talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
All them years she froze
I lived with it, yeah.
Close to 30 years.
No, I
That's
lived
right.
there 30 years.
You're talking about here, like 30 years of school.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where we're coming up with around 1.1 million that we're going to be ticking off of the CARES 3 balance at the bottom. And included in that, we have this, in your package, you've got 3 FYIs. And 2 of those are CARES 3. And then I think the last thing on my section is the FY23 budget. You should have that, the newspaper budget. It's this page.
Is that him?
Yeah. No, we've got it in there.
It'll be, to advertise, and then, we still make changes, we're required to advertise it for 2 weeks. And then, Monday night, the schedule would be to vote to advertise, and then whatever changes may or may not be made to it, then in June, you adopt it, and then it becomes the budget commission.
And so far, we haven't made any changes to what we talked about in the budget so far, to revenues or expenditures. So we're advertising it as it was presented to you. Any questions? Yeah, thank goodness for CARES.
That's what I said. I hated COVID came, but it kind of helped us out a little bit.
Okay, next, we have some field trips there, various ones, we can go through those with North Murray High School volleyball team, going to skills camp, North Murray going to football camp, North Murray going to a team camp, North Murray band and chorus, Gladden's going, Georgia Studies trip, and I believe that may be it, but with various overnight field trip. Okay. The next item would be, personnel, and we just go to executive session and discuss a few personnel.
Resolution for board executive session. Motion by Randall,
Second.
Second by Kelly, all in favor?
Thank you, Rosie.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think you will.
Beneficial.